Thank you, guests, and thank you, Chair. And I wasn't here for your open statement, but I have read them. And thank you for that. You've been critical of the blurring between core and non-core spending and the impact it has on transparency. Can you elaborate on how you feel the spending should be presented? And is there any spending at present that you could be classified, I suppose, as non-core, please?
Yeah, so at the risk of echoing the discussion we had in September, there are occasions where there are types of spending, even if they're not. So we even discussed this. So just to show that there's reasonable people can disagree on these things. But one answer is completely temporary things that you just exceptionally have to pay in a given year, and you want to take them out and you want to treat them. The EU fiscal rules used to allow what are called one-offs, and they also were susceptible to potentially, mislabeling as one-off, something that we think would persist. I actually think there's also a reasonable approach to thinking something like COVID, which is a, touch wood, once in 100-year pandemic type event, that the costs of adjusting to that should not be borne just on one generation in 2020 or 2021, but instead could reasonably be spread out over many. And again, there could be arguments for how you do that. Yeah. Where our debate in September sort of pushed me, at least, is that once you get to the point where we're all arguing about what is core and what is non-core, it probably is counterproductive. We should just look at the total spending, and then if there are things in that we think of as exceptional, that you could stand in front of the House, in front of the public, and explain why, because of those things, whatever is the fiscal anchor that you've set as part of your fiscal framework is being violated. So the answer is I think we could sit here for many hours into the night discussing whether one thing should be core or non-core, but it's pretty clear that the ordinary business of fiscal spending we think should be part of core, because it comes with it a sort of a need to be financed. Yeah.
Thank you. With regard to better targeting of the cost of living supports and the once-off nature of them, does it not address the ongoing energy poverty faced by older people who may be reliant on electrical? And I'm speaking about, I would have constituents who maybe would be on dialysis machines or, oxygen or that, and their heating and all of that would be gone up, and it'd be continuously high energy bills coming into their home. And protection from them being disconnected, it's not really, the bills are still accruing, and the once-off payments are not really of any value to them, if that makes sense. So I suppose what I'm really asking is there anything that could be considered for people that are affected like this?
As we've made clear in this report, and we sort of made clear last year, but I think last year it was somewhat more understandable, the untargeted nature, because we sort of were getting to the budget at a time when energy prices had just shot up. It wasn't obvious exactly how you would target them, what mechanisms we had to identify exactly who we had to target them. And so there are occasions where a blanket approach ensures you or minimizes the chance you miss someone who's really needy at the cost of giving to some people who maybe didn't need it, or, and that's regularly the case. Now, a year has passed, and the question is whether in that year more effort could have gone in, not just in Ireland, but across Europe, in figuring out the ideal way to target these, so that when if we decide we need them again, and although energy prices have come back a bit, they still remain elevated over sort of recent levels, pre-COVID levels. We might ask, could we have tried to figure out a way to target them more appropriately? Because I think this is anecdote, but if there was a panel discussion at the weekend about this, and there were people saying that they get their 150 energy payments, but they're out of the house all day, they live in a small apartment, they don't actually, it makes a huge dent in their bill, they don't need it. So there is a question about how you target it. Yeah. We don't look into the mechanisms of that, but there is a question of whether over the last year, better attempts at figuring out how to target these payments could have been done.
Okay, so hopefully we'll look at it again and have better targeting. if we need to. With regard to possible benchmark and state pensions and the poverty prevention benefits this would bring to older people, could windfall capital funds be used to fund this process, do you think?
To fund increases in the state pension?
Yeah.
So we have made the case previously and remain of the view, and this is how we view the Future Ireland Fund, that the real value of it is to deal with the medium and longer term challenges associated with demographic pressures. A decision, which again is a decision for any government of the day, to raise the actual generosity of the pension today or next year or whatever, is one that should fall under the normal financing arrangements. And as I said in my opening statement, towards the end of the opening statement, even putting the excess corporation taxes into the fund as it's currently planned and with sort of reasonable estimates on the returns on that fund, by 2050, the expectation is we'll only be covering about a quarter of the extra costs we have to face. So again, if you think that we're putting money away and it's going to cover some of it, there's still a lot of adjustment to do. And so it makes sense not to add to that by trying to use up some extra of the excess today to boost the level of pensions to a level that becomes even more unsustainable in 2050. So again, it's a perfectly open choice for any government to make, but they should make it within the overall budgeting package and therefore not treat it outside of core or non-core. Pension spending is part of core spending.
Okay, thank you for that.